"Do you have a mate?" the Lycan king asked. She whispered, "Not yet," and he snapped with jealousy. The moon hung low, blood-red and heavy, casting its eerie light over the ancient castle that loomed like a sentinel above the valley. Inside, shadows twisted against stone walls, flickering in the light of torches. This was a kingdom ruled not by kings and advisors alone, but by creatures of power, bound by bloodlines and ancient laws older than the mountains themselves. The Lycan king, Kalen, stood at the highest balcony, his eyes scanning the mist-shrouded forests. His figure was broad, powerful, and commanding, yet there was a weight in his stance, an invisible burden pressing upon him. Centuries had carved a solitude into his heart, a longing no amount of rule or victory could erase. Tonight, the court was unusually tense. Whispers of unrest mingled with the scent of pine and wet stone. The air was thick with expectation, as if the forest itself had held its breath. Kalen turned his gaze toward the approaching figure. She moved through the courtyard with cautious grace, her cloak brushing the cobblestones. Her hair was dark, streaked with the silver of moonlight, and her eyes held a quiet strength that intrigued even the most hardened warriors of the court. She was human, or at least mostly human, though some whispered of fey blood hidden in her veins. Her name was Elira. She had come seeking knowledge of an ancient curse, one that threatened not only the kingdom but the very balance of the forests and the creatures that dwelled within them. Her arrival had stirred more than curiosity. It had stirred something primal within Kalen. The guards parted for her, bowing low, yet their movements were tinged with caution. They knew the king's moods, the shifts in his temper that came like storms. Elira's heart beat faster, not with fear but with a strange anticipation she could not name. She had heard stories of the Lycan king, how his loyalty to his people was unwavering, how his wrath was feared even beyond the borders of the kingdom. And yet, she felt drawn to him, as though some invisible thread tied her fate to his. At the grand hall, torches flickered against walls etched with runes and murals of past kings and their battles. Wolves in stone leapt from friezes, eyes glowing faintly in the torchlight. Kalen descended the stairs with a fluid, predatory grace, his presence alone commanding silence. The courtiers dared not speak, for their king's gaze was sharp and all-encompassing. "Do you have a mate?" His voice was low, almost a growl, yet it carried weight beyond mere sound. Elira froze, her breath catching. The question was unexpected, intimate, and dangerous. She had anticipated questions about her journey, her knowledge, perhaps even her lineage, but not this. "Not yet," she whispered, her voice steady though her heart fluttered. The words seemed to strike Kalen like a blade. His jaw tightened, and a flicker of something dark crossed his eyes. Jealousy, raw and unrefined, flared in his chest. He had not expected the truth to sting so sharply, and yet it did. Elira, oblivious to the storm she had ignited, continued to meet his gaze with calm courage. The hall was silent except for the crackle of torches and the distant rumble of thunder. Kalen's instincts surged. He was a king, a predator, and yet the presence of Elira made him feel more exposed than he had in centuries. The jealousy gnawed at him, a reminder of the loneliness that had defined his life. "Come," he commanded abruptly, his tone brooking no argument. The guard stepped back, uncertain, while Elira followed, curiosity and caution warring within her. She did not yet understand the danger of being so close to him, not just the danger of his power, but the danger of what she could awaken in him. Kalen led her to a private chamber at the heart of the castle, a room filled with ancient tomes, artifacts of old magic, and the faint scent of wild herbs. He motioned for her to sit, though he did not sit himself. His gaze was relentless, studying her, weighing her, measuring the spark that had ignited the jealousy within him. "You are not like the others," he said finally, his voice softer, almost a whisper. "There is a fire in you I cannot ignore." Elira tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "I am not here to impress anyone," she said. "I am here to learn, to understand the curse that haunts your lands. Kalen's expression darkened. The curse was a wound in the kingdom's soul, one that had cost him more than he could speak aloud. Centuries ago, a rival sorcerer had placed a spell on his bloodline, binding the king to solitude and longing. The curse had taken his mate before she could even choose him, leaving him to rule alone, his heart a battlefield of grief and anger. "You are brave," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Or foolish. I cannot tell which." His sharp eyes softened as he studied her. "Do you understand the danger you face? This kingdom, this forest, it does not forgive those who tread lightly." "I understand," Elira replied, "and I am willing to risk it." Her words were steady, her resolve shining through the fear that clutched at her heart. Kalen studied her, the primal part of him drawn to her courage, her strength, her quiet defiance. She did not fear him, and that alone was enough to unsettle him. The night deepened, shadows stretching across the room like living things. The wind rattled the shutters, carrying whispers from the forest outside. Kalen's mind wrestled with the emotions Elira stirred within him. Desire, jealousy, protectiveness, all tangled together in a knot he had long thought untouchable. "I will not allow anyone to harm you," he said finally, a growl underlying his words. "You will be under my protection." Elira's eyes widened slightly. "I do not need protection," she began, but the look in his eyes silenced her. There was an intensity there that spoke of centuries of loss, of loneliness, of raw, unspoken emotion. To refuse him would be foolish. "I will accept your protection," she said quietly, though her voice carried the weight of a choice she did not fully understand. Kalen nodded once sharply. "Then you will remain here in the castle. The forest is not safe for someone like you, not while the curse festers and others seek to exploit it." His eyes narrowed, the feral edge in him rising. "And you must stay close, too close." Elira's pulse quickened. There was something in the words, in the way he said them, that made her chest tighten. She did not fully understand the pull she felt toward him, the dangerous magnetism that seemed to wrap around her very soul. The night stretched on, filled with the quiet hum of magic and the distant howl of wolves. Kalen remained near, his presence a constant shadow that was at once comforting and terrifying. Elira wandered the chamber, touching the spines of ancient tomes, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down. She realized, with a mixture of awe and fear, that she had stepped into a world far older, far darker, and far more beautiful than she could have imagined. Hours passed and the storm outside grew fiercer. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the forest in jagged bursts. In that light, Elira saw him, Kalen, standing at the window, eyes scanning the horizon. He was magnificent, terrifying, and achingly human all at once. "You are thinking too much," he said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. His voice was softer now, a whisper carried over the wind. "You must feel, Elira, you must trust. The curse, the court, none of it can touch you if we stand together." She met his gaze, heart pounding. I do not know if I can," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have never faced anything like this." Kalen's lips curved in a small, almost imperceptible smile. "None have," he said, "and that is why you are here, not by chance. The forest, the bloodline, perhaps even fate itself has brought you to me." Elira felt a shiver run down her spine. There was truth in his words, and a danger that made her pulse quicken. She was drawn to him, despite the warnings etched into her very soul, drawn to the feral, commanding presence that had both terrified and intrigued her since the moment she arrived. The moon reached its zenith, casting silver light across the chamber. Kalen turned toward her, and for the first time, Elira saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the weight of centuries of longing, of loneliness, of loss. And in that moment, something shifted between them. A thread had been pulled, one that neither fully understood. Desire, caution, and something deeper, something ancient and unspoken, wound itself around them both. And as the storm raged outside, a quiet understanding passed between them. Their fates were now entwined, bound by the shadows of the past and the pull of something neither dared to name. The wind howled again, louder this time, shaking the castle walls. Kalen's eyes narrowed as he listened, the feral side of him alert, protective, dangerous. Elira felt it too, the silent threat that lurked just beyond the castle gates. The forest waited, patient and ancient, and so did those who would seek to exploit the curse that haunted the Lycan king's bloodline. Kalen stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, yet not suffocating. "You are not safe," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "And I cannot promise that I will control myself if anyone dares to harm you." Elira met his gaze, heart racing. "Then I will trust you," she whispered, the weight of the words heavy in the air. Kalen's jaw tightened, a storm raging within him. Jealousy, longing, and a fierce, protective instinct surged through his veins. He had not expected this. The fire she ignited, the defiance she carried, the courage that mirrored his own. And yet he could not deny it. She was unlike anyone he had ever known. The night stretched on, endless and electric, filled with quiet tension, whispered possibilities, and the promise of something dangerous, beautiful, and uncharted. And as the first lightning of a distant storm illuminated the hall, Kalen realized with a flicker of both fear and desire. The woman before him was no ordinary guest. She was the spark that could either save his kingdom or destroy his heart entirely. The cliff outside howled in the wind, and the castle seemed to hold its breath, waiting. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the forest, eyes watched. Kalen knew the night had only just begun, and that the threads of fate were weaving a story far darker and far more beautiful than either he or Elira could yet imagine. The storm had passed, but the castle and the forest surrounding it were not calm. Mist clung to the trees like silver fingers, and the air smelled of wet earth and ancient magic. Elira walked along the stone corridors, her footsteps echoing softly. Every corner of the castle seemed to hold whispers, secrets of a past she had not yet uncovered. The shadows flickered in the torchlight, moving almost as if they were alive. Kalen followed silently, his presence a shadow beside her. She could feel it, the constant weight of him, a mixture of protection, desire, and something darker, more primal. It made her chest tighten and her pulse quicken, though she refused to show it. There was a strange rhythm between them, a tension that had not yet been named. "You move through these halls as though you own them," Kalen said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Do you feel safe here?" Elira shook her head, though she kept her gaze steady. "I feel aware. There is power here and not all of it friendly." He smiled faintly, a shadow of amusement crossing his otherwise stern features. "Good. You should always feel aware. The castle, the forest, even the court danger is never far, and yet somehow you walk as if it does not matter." "I do not wish to be afraid," she said. "Fear can paralyze even the strongest, and I have come too far to stop now." Kalen's eyes lingered on her, sharp and penetrating. There was bravery in her words, yes, but also curiosity, defiance, and a spark he could not ignore. He felt a pull toward her, magnetic and unrelenting, one that tangled with centuries of loneliness and longing. And he knew, as much as he tried to deny it, that he wanted her closer than he had ever allowed anyone to be. They reached the library, a vast hall lined with towering shelves of ancient tomes. Dust floated in the air, illuminated by the shafts of light from tall windows. Elira ran her fingers along the spines, feeling the weight of history, the power contained in the written word. "You seek knowledge," Kalen said, stepping closer. "But knowledge can be dangerous. Some truths are meant to be hidden." "I must know," Elira replied. "The curse, it threatens everything. Your people, the forest, even the balance of the world outside this kingdom. I cannot turn back." Kalen studied her, the tension in his body coiling like a spring. There was something about her determination that stirred him, made him uneasy and yet drawn. He wanted to challenge her, test her, but he also wanted to protect her with every part of his being. And perhaps, Most frightening of all, he wanted her heart. "I will tell you what you must know," he said finally. "But not yet. First, you must understand the danger. The curse. It is old, powerful, and clever. It seeks not only to destroy but to divide, and anyone who tries to confront it must be prepared for sacrifice." Elira nodded, her heart steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "I am prepared," she said. "Whatever it takes." Kalen's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly, though the flicker of jealousy had not left his eyes. He could sense her courage, yes, but he could also sense the interest of others in her presence. Some of the court whispered openly, admiring her grace, her knowledge, her beauty. Kalen's chest tightened every time he caught a lingering glance from another. The thought of anyone touching her, claiming even a fraction of her attention, sparked a raw, protective anger in him. "You must not trust them all," he warned. "Not all eyes that look upon you are loyal." Elira met his gaze, understanding the layers beneath his words. "I am careful," she said. "I trust where trust is earned." Kalen's expression darkened. "And yet I cannot prevent my instincts. I am the king. My blood, my power, all demand that I guard you." His voice trembled slightly, though he did not realize it. "And yet you test me, Elira. I have not felt this in centuries." She looked at him, seeing the flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath his feral strength. "Test you?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. "Your presence, your courage, it challenges me in ways I cannot name. I am not used to being tested, and I am not used to wanting something I cannot command." The tension between them was like a living thing, coiling and twisting in the space of the library. Elira's heart beat faster, drawn to him, even as fear lingered in the edges of her mind. She had come seeking knowledge, but she had found something far more dangerous: the raw, unyielding presence of a king who could claim her body and heart without even touching her. "Do not be afraid," Kalen said, stepping closer. "I do not seek to harm you, only to protect." Elira nodded, though the warmth that spread through her chest betrayed the calm she tried to maintain. "I am not afraid of you," she said. "I am afraid of failing. Afraid of the curse, of what it could do, afraid of what others might want from me." Kalen's eyes softened. "Then let me bear that burden with you," he said. "Let me be your shield." A quiet understanding passed between them, fragile and electric. Neither spoke, for words could not capture the storm of emotion swirling in the space between them. And then, as if summoned by the tension, a howl rose from the forest beyond the castle walls. It was long, mournful, and full of warning. Kalen's ears twitched, his jaw tightening. The Lycan king within him stirred, primal and protective. "They are restless tonight," he said, voice low. "The wolves. The curse awakens even in their minds. Something is coming, Elira, something dangerous." She shivered, not from cold but from the weight of his words and the intensity of his gaze. "Then we must be ready," she said. Kalen nodded. "We will face it together." His words were calm, but the undercurrent of emotion, the jealousy, the longing, the unspoken desire, tangled around her heart like ivy. As the night deepened, Elira explored the castle grounds under his watchful eye. The forest stretched endlessly, mist curling around ancient trees. Shadows moved like living things, and the castle itself seemed alive, breathing, listening. Kalen remained close, a constant presence, his eyes never leaving hers. "You are brave," he said quietly, "but do not mistake courage for safety. The world beyond these walls is merciless, and the curse, it will test you." "I am willing to be tested," she replied. "I have come too far to turn back." He studied her, the storm within him raging. Jealousy flickered again as he saw the admiration of the castle guards and the courtiers. The thought of anyone else seeing her, touching her, speaking to her, he could not bear it. And yet he had no claim, no right, except the pull of his own desire. "You must not fall for anyone else," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "For if you do, I cannot promise what I might become." Elira felt a shiver run through her. His words were a warning, yes, but also a promise. "Then I will trust you," she said softly. The hours passed like whispers of wind. Kaelin and Elira sat beneath the tallest tower, watching the moon break through the clouds. Wolves howled in the distance, their calls echoing across the forest, and the castle seemed to pulse with magic, alive and aware. "You are unlike anyone I have ever known," Kaelin admitted finally, his voice almost a whisper. "You are fearless, clever, and dangerous in ways I cannot name, and yet I cannot stop wanting you near." Elira looked at him, heart pounding. "I feel it too," she admitted, voice soft. "The pull, the danger, the connection. I cannot explain it, but it is there." Kaelin's eyes softened, the feral edge momentarily hidden beneath centuries of loneliness. "Then we are bound in ways neither of us fully understands. The forest, the curse, it has brought you to me, and I will not let you go." The wind howled louder, shaking the tower walls. Shadows flickered across the stone, and the distant cry of a wolf cut through the night. Kaelin's jaw tightened, his body coiled like a spring. Something was moving in the forest, watching, waiting. "Elira," he said, voice low, tense, "they are close. The ones who would seek to harm you, they are coming. You must be ready." Her heart raced, not with fear but with anticipation. "Then let us face them together," she said. Kaelin's eyes burned with a mixture of pride, longing, and something unspoken. "Together," he agreed. The moonlight bathed them both, shadows twisting around the tower like living fingers, and in the distance unseen eyes watched, waiting for the right moment to strike. The forest was restless, the curse stirring, and the night was far from over. Elira and Kaelin stood side by side, bound by an unspoken promise, the weight of destiny and desire pressing down upon them. And as the wind carried the distant howl of wolves through the trees, they knew one truth. The darkness outside the castle walls was nothing compared to the storm that was rising between them. The forest stretched endlessly before them, dark and thick with mist. Trees arched high into the sky, their branches weaving a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. Every shadow seemed alive, moving with a life of its own. Elira's heart raced with both fear and determination. She could feel Kaelin's presence beside her, always close, a protective shadow against the unknown. Kaelin moved silently, his steps soundless on the forest floor. His eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the darkness, picking up the smallest movement, the faintest sound. He had sensed the danger approaching for days, yet now it was finally close. A rival faction, seeking to exploit the curse and claim the kingdom, had sent agents to capture Elira, and the Lycan king would not allow it. "You must stay close," he warned, his voice low and controlled, though the tension in his body betrayed the storm within. "Do not stray. Every step in this forest carries risk." Elira nodded, her hands clenched at her sides. "I am ready," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "Whatever comes, I will face it." Kaelin's gaze softened, though the protective edge never left it. "You are brave," he said, "and yet you are not safe. The forest is not forgiving. The curse touches everything here, and those who seek you will not hesitate." The first signs of pursuit came quickly. The underbrush rustled with unnatural sounds, and shadows moved just beyond the edge of their vision. Kaelin's ears twitched, his body coiled like a spring. Elira could feel the tension radiating from him, a force as powerful as the forest itself. She had never seen anyone so attuned to danger, so alive with it. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows, a scout of the rival faction. Kaelin moved before she could react, a blur of motion. He lunged forward, a growl rolling from deep in his chest, and the scout collapsed to the ground, unconscious but unharmed. Elira's breath caught in her throat. She had expected danger, yes, but the sheer speed, strength, and precision of Kaelin's movements left her stunned. "You must remain still," he commanded, his eyes burning with intensity. "Do not let them see you. Do not let them know where you are." Elira nodded, pressing herself against the trunk of a massive oak. Her heart pounded, not only from fear but from the closeness of the king, the raw power that radiated from him. Every instinct in her body screamed caution, Yet there was a strange thrill in walking this dangerous path beside him. The night deepened, shadows stretching and twisting with the light of the moon breaking through the trees. Elira and Kaelin moved silently, weaving through the forest with the skill of hunters. Each step was measured, each sound calculated. The tension between them was electric, a living thing that coiled around their hearts. As they approached a clearing, Elira saw the faint glow of magical energy in the distance. The rival faction had set a trap, a barrier designed to capture or harm her. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "Stay back," he whispered, though the warning was almost unnecessary. He moved forward, every muscle in his body alert, every sense honed for the confrontation. The barrier shimmered, a wall of twisting shadows and faint green light. Elira could feel the power in it, the malevolent intent. "What is it?" she asked, voice trembling. "A trap," Kaelin said, "and a test. The curse protects this forest, and those who would seek to exploit it will face its wrath. But the magic here, it is clever. It will not stop easily." He stepped forward, and the air around him seemed to thrum with power. His form shifted, subtle at first, then more pronounced, fur bristling, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Elira felt a shiver run down her spine. The king was no longer just a man. He was the embodiment of the forest's strength, a guardian of its secrets. The barrier pulsed, reacting to his presence. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming shapes that seemed alive. Kaelin moved with a fluid grace, countering the magic, his body and mind in perfect harmony with the forest. Elira watched, awed and terrified. She could feel the danger in every movement, yet she could not look away. Suddenly, one of the shadows lunged toward her. Elira's instincts kicked in and she dodged, rolling to the side. Kaelin's roar echoed through the trees, and the shadow froze, then dissipated into mist. He turned toward her, eyes blazing. "Do not move without my signal," he commanded. "The forest is alive and it will not forgive mistakes." Elira nodded, her heart racing. She had never felt so vulnerable and yet so alive. The danger, the tension, the raw power of Kaelin beside her, it all made her feel more connected to life than she ever had before. They moved closer to the center of the clearing, where the barrier's energy was strongest. Kaelin's eyes softened as he glanced at her. "You are brave," he said. "Braver than many who have walked these halls for centuries, but bravery alone will not protect you. You must trust me." "I do," Elira whispered, though her voice carried more conviction than she had expected. "I trust you completely." The barrier shimmered again, and this time the rival faction revealed themselves, figures cloaked in darkness, wielding magic twisted by greed and malice. Kaelin's growl rose, low and dangerous, and the air around him seemed to hum with energy. He stepped in front of Elira, placing himself as a shield, and the forest itself seemed to respond, branches twisting, roots rising, wolves howling in the distance. Elira felt fear, yes, but also a fierce determination. She would not stand aside while he fought for her, while the kingdom, the forest, and the balance of magic were at stake. She reached for the staff she carried, one imbued with knowledge and a spark of her own latent power. Though she had not yet mastered it, she would use it to protect herself and him, if necessary. The rival faction moved forward and the air crackled with energy. Shadows and spells collided with Kaelin's power, and the ground shook beneath them. Elira felt the tension, the danger, and the intensity of the battle like a living thing pressing against her chest. She stepped closer to Kaelin, drawn by the need to protect, to stand beside him in the storm. Kaelin's eyes met hers, and for a moment the battle faded. In that glance there was understanding, connection, and something more, desire, longing, and the unspoken bond forming between them. "Stay close," he said, his voice low, almost tender. "Together we are stronger." She nodded, and together they moved, side by side, through the chaos. Spells collided, shadows twisted, and the forest seemed to come alive around them. Every step was a test, every movement a challenge, yet they moved in unison, their trust growing with every heartbeat. As they reached the center of the clearing, Kalen used a surge of his power to break the barrier, the shadows dissipating into the night. The rival faction retreated, their plan foiled for now. Elira's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the exhilaration of facing danger alongside the Lycan king. Kalen turned to her, his eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. "You are remarkable," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of admiration and something deeper, something unspoken. Few could have faced that and remained standing. Elira smiled faintly, though her chest heaved. "I could not have done it alone," she admitted. "I needed you." Kalen's jaw tightened, the flicker of jealousy and desire returning. "And yet, you must understand," he said, stepping closer. "I will not allow anyone to harm you, not now, not ever, and if anyone tries, they will answer to me." Elira felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief and something she could not name. She had come seeking knowledge, seeking to understand a curse, yet she had found something far more dangerous, an unspoken connection, a bond that threatened to unravel both their hearts and their fates. The night stretched on, filled with quiet tension and unspoken words. Kalen remained near, a constant presence, his power and desire coiling around her like the shadows of the forest. Elira knew that the danger was far from over, that the curse, the rival faction, and the secrets of the forest would test them again. But she also knew something else, that she had come to care for the Lycan king, perhaps more than she should, and that he, in turn, was drawn to her in ways he could not yet control. As dawn approached, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The mist swirled around them, the trees whispering secrets, and the distant howls of wolves carried a warning. Kalen turned to Elira, his expression unreadable, yet the intensity in his eyes spoke volumes. "We have survived this night," he said, voice low and steady. "But the danger is not gone. The curse stirs, the faction will return, and the forest it watches. Always." Elira nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Then we will face it together," she said, her voice firm. Kalen's eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment the feral edge faded, leaving only the man beneath, the king, the protector, the wolf who had walked alone for centuries. "Together," he agreed. And as the first light of dawn touched the mist, a new tension settled between them, a mixture of longing, trust, and unspoken desire. The forest was quiet, but the danger had not passed. And somewhere beyond the veil of mist, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the moment to strike. The forest had never been more silent. The mist clung to the branches like silver threads, and the first light of dawn struggled to pierce the canopy. Elira and Kalen moved carefully through the shadows, their footsteps soundless on the damp earth. The curse that had haunted the Lycan king's lands for centuries was stirring, its power tangible in the air, thick and heavy like smoke. Kalen's senses were alert, every muscle coiled with tension. Elira stayed close, feeling the hum of his presence beside her, the warmth and danger of him rolled into one. They had faced trials together, tested by rival factions and by the unpredictable forest, but the greatest challenge awaited them at the heart of the curse, the ruined temple, where the magic of old still pulsed with malevolent life. "This is it," Kalen said, his voice low. "The source of the curse, the place where my ancestors were bound, and the darkness that has haunted me for centuries remains strongest here." Elira looked at the temple, its stone walls cracked and covered in creeping vines. Strange symbols etched into the surface glowed faintly, a green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. She felt a shiver run through her. The air was heavy with the weight of the past, the sorrow and anger of generations, and the promise of danger that had not yet been tested. "Are you sure we can face this?" she asked, her voice steady though her heart beat fast. Kalen's eyes softened as he looked at her. "We have faced much already," he said. "But this will be the greatest test. You must trust me completely." "I do," she whispered. "I trust you more than anyone." The moment their hands brushed as he gestured toward the temple, A spark of energy passed between them, faint but undeniable. It was not magic, exactly. It was connection, trust, and something deeper, something neither of them fully understood yet. Kalen's chest tightened, a mixture of longing and fear coiling within him. He had ruled for centuries, fought countless battles, and yet nothing had ever felt like this. The need to protect and the need to claim, not out of possession, but out of love and respect. The temple gates were enormous, carved of stone and inscribed with runes that seemed to move in the flickering light. Elira felt the pull of the magic, dangerous and alluring. Kalen stepped forward, placing himself between her and the entrance. "Stay close," he said, his voice low and steady. "The curse reacts to fear and hesitation. We must enter together with courage and trust." Elira nodded, heart pounding. They crossed the threshold, and the air inside the temple was thick with energy. Shadows danced along the walls, shapes twisting and shifting like living creatures. Whispers of voices long gone echoed through the halls, soft and sorrowful, and the floor beneath them seemed to pulse with life. Kalen's senses sharpened, the wolf within him alert to every threat. He moved ahead, yet always close enough to shield Elira from the unseen dangers. They navigated the corridors carefully, the tension between them growing with every step. Elira could feel the power of the curse pressing down on them, testing their resolve, challenging their bond. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Kalen nodded. "Yes, it seeks to divide us, to turn our fears against us. We must remain united or the curse will win." They reached the central chamber, a vast hall filled with broken statues and shattered pillars. The green light of the curse glowed brighter here, pulsating in time with an unseen heartbeat. Elira's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the magic reaching for her, probing her mind and spirit, testing her courage. Kalen stepped closer to her. "Do not be afraid," he said. "We face this together." Elira took a deep breath, feeling the power of the bond between them. The trust, the tension, the unspoken connection. They were not just facing the curse, but facing the strength they had found in each other. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a figure, tall and twisted, a being of darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its voice was like the echo of 1,000 sorrows. "You seek to break the curse," it said, "and yet you are bound by your own desires, your own weaknesses. You cannot succeed." Kalen stepped forward, his eyes glowing with fierce light. "We do not rely on desire alone," he said, voice strong. "We rely on trust, courage, and the bond we share. You will not stop us." The figure lunged, shadows whipping around them. Kalen moved with impossible speed, intercepting the attack, while Elira felt a surge of her own latent power awaken. She raised her staff, and a beam of light, pure and steady, shot toward the dark figure. The magic met with the shadows, colliding in a burst of energy that shook the chamber. Kalen and Elira moved together, their actions instinctive, their trust absolute. He countered the attacks with his strength and skill, while she directed her magic to support him, to protect and weaken the curse's hold. Every movement, every glance, every heartbeat was in sync. "You are remarkable," Kalen said, even as he fought. "Stronger than I could have imagined, braver than anyone I have known." Elira felt warmth spread through her chest, not just from his praise but from the closeness, the bond they shared. "We are stronger together," she replied, and for a moment the shadows faltered, unsure of their hold. The dark figure roared, the sound echoing through the temple like rolling thunder. It struck with renewed force, but Kalen and Elira were unyielding. They moved as one, their bond a shield, their courage a weapon. Slowly, steadily, the shadows began to unravel, dissipating into mist, and the light of the temple shifted from green to soft silver, the curse weakening under the strength of their unity. Finally, the figure shrieked, dissolving into nothingness, leaving the chamber silent except for the hum of fading magic. Elira fell to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Kalen stepped beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said, his voice soft, almost gentle. "We did well together." She looked up at him, her eyes meeting his. "We survived," she whispered, a mixture of relief and awe in her voice. "And the curse, it's broken." Kalen nodded, though his expression was serious. "The curse is weakened, yes, but it will take time to fully restore the balance, and the kingdom, we must still guard it." Elira smiled faintly, though her chest ached. "Then we will face that together too," she said. For a long moment, they stood in the quiet chamber, the weight of what they had accomplished settling over them. The danger had been real, the threat immense, yet they had prevailed, not because of strength alone, but because of trust, courage, and the bond that had formed between them. Kalen's eyes softened, and he stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "There is something I have not said," he murmured, his voice low and intimate. "Something I should have said long ago." Elira's heart quickened. "What is it?" she asked, though a part of her already knew. He took her hand gently, his thumb brushing against her skin. "I have wanted you, not as a subject, not as someone to guard, but as someone I could trust, someone I could rely on, someone who has touched my heart in ways I never thought possible. You are my mate if you will have me." Elira's breath caught. The word hung between them, weighty and precious. She had felt the pull, the connection, the bond that had grown through danger and trust. And now, to hear it spoken aloud from him, it changed everything. I trust you," she said softly, "and I feel the same. I will have you as my mate." A quiet smile touched Kalen's lips, and for the first time in centuries he allowed himself to feel peace. The tension, the jealousy, the longing, they had all led to this moment. And now, standing together, they were stronger than ever, bound not by magic alone, but by choice, trust, and love. Outside the temple, the forest seemed to breathe, the mist lifting slightly as the first rays of sunlight broke through the canopy. Wolves howled in the distance, not in warning, but in celebration, their voices carrying the promise of a new day. The kingdom, the curse, and the forest itself seemed to respond, acknowledging the bond that had been forged, the balance slowly returning. Kalen and Elira emerged from the temple together, hands entwined. The air was crisp, the mist curling around them like a protective cloak. They walked side by side, not just as king and guest, but as mates, equals, and partners in both heart and destiny. "We have faced much," Kalen said, his voice quiet but steady. "And yet there will be more challenges. But now I know that we can face anything together." Elira smiled, the weight of the past and the fear of the unknown lifted slightly by the bond they shared. "Yes," she said, "together we are stronger, and nothing will break that." As they reached the edge of the forest, the sunlight poured through the trees, golden and warm. The castle loomed ahead, no longer a place of shadows alone, but a home where danger had been met and love had taken root. And as Elira and Kalen stepped forward side by side, the kingdom watched silently, knowing that a new era had begun, one bound not by fear, but by trust, courage, and the undeniable bond between a Lycan king and his mate. The forest behind them whispered secrets of old, but no shadow dared approach. The curse had been faced, the danger met, and the hearts of two souls, long bound by fate, had finally found each other. And in the quiet dawn, Kalen allowed himself a smile, soft and human, as Elira's hand remained firmly in his, proof that the bond they had forged in darkness would endure in the light.